morning. Today I'm gonna start working on this. So this is my first ever live stream, and I thought maybe I would work on a project that I haven't had time to do since before the pandemic. And so, yeah, the pattern is from J.P. Ryan, and it's called the Pet de l'air, which actually translates to fart in the wind. And it is a 18th century style gown that was designed in France, and it has the like back cape sort of thing. So I think it's kind of fun. This is my first time doing this pattern. The pattern is not very easy to understand, so I've read the directions several times and I kind of don't know what they are asking for, so we'll figure it out. Anyway, since this is my first stream, if you're tuning in, I am gonna check the chats and stuff, so please chat in if you have ever sewn this pattern before and you see that I'm doing something wrong. Please, please, please chat in and tell me your secrets. All right, well, I'm just gonna get started and let me know. Okay, so my directions say, give me one moment. All right, like I said, this is my very first stream, so I had to check my sound levels, but because I'm using my iPad as my camera and my broadcast dashboard, I had to get up and go check it. So anyway, the overview of this pattern says, ties and boning are sewn into the back of the lining. The lining is sewn together with understomacher and lining facing. The back of the gown is pleated to shape, and the pleats are sewn down by hand. The side skirt extensions are sewn to the back. The front of the gown is pleated to shape, with a dart at the shoulders. The back neck piece is pinned in place, and the front is sewn to the back at the shoulders. Side seams are sewn together. Skirt pleats are folded and stitched to across the top. Sleeves are set into armholes by hand. Lining is set into gown and sleeve flounces are added to finish the garment. Stomacher is assembled, boned, and finished by hand. Fit. The bodice of the pétalaire is designed to fit very close to torso over stays. The garment has a very narrow back and a wide bosom, as was fashionable during the period. The sleeves are fairly full and should not restrict the upper arms. It says stuff about making a muslin, which I'm not going to do because I'm not really making this to fit anybody. I'm just making it to do the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and do it in my fashion fabric. I've already cut out everything. That was the easiest part. So what I'm going to do now is, it says the direction number 1 is cut 10 pieces of twill tape 12 inches long. I've already done that. I've already pinned it down. By putting the tapes on the outside rather than the inside of the lining, the gown will fit more comfortably and enable adjustments after the gown is on the wearer. Okay. So, using twill tape or fabric casing that covers most plastic feather boning, pin casing to the back lining piece as indicated in the pattern. Over the tapes, stitch casing to the back along the casing stitch line, which is this line here, leaving the top end of the casing open. If using twill tape, stitch as close to the edge of the tape as possible, as enough width must remain to hold the feather boning. Sewing in the casing also sews on the ends of the tapes. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Insert boning by hand and stitch tops of the casing closed. Okay, so I have several different kinds of boning. I have this stuff, which is used a lot in everyday garments and bridal, and it's pretty good. If I end up using this, I would just sew this on over the twill tapes, and then I would probably just sew the extra more twill on top of that. But I haven't decided if I'm going to use this boning yet or not. Because I also have these kinds of boning. I have German plastic boning, which is used a lot in stays and such because of how similar it is to whalebone, which you can't get anymore. Or you probably can, actually, I don't really know, but I would assume that you can't get it because whales are going extinct and people don't want you to murder a whale just to steal his teeth, which is basically what whalebone is. It's the baleen of the, I can't even remember what kind of whale it was, but it's a kind of whale that eats the little algae things, or whatever, kelp? Kale? No. I don't know anymore. I used to know, but I don't know anymore. I just know that this stuff is pretty good. I used it in all of my Renaissance corsets and 18th century, which is 1700s stays. Actually, the Renaissance, they didn't wear corsets, they wore stays. So all the stays. So anything that makes a conical shape on the body, I use this stuff mostly. Then I've got these two kinds. Once corsets started becoming corsets, then the boning started turning into this metal spring boning and this flat steel boning. So if I was making a Edwardian corset or anything from like the 1800s, I would use this kind of boning because it wants to wrap around and support curves, body curves. And then I would also use this boning too for like maybe the very front and the very back. I also use these kinds for ballet bodices, which are basically based on corsets from the 19th century. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to use today. I definitely don't think I'm going to use these two. But I have to decide whether I want to use this kind or this kind. And I'm kind of leaning towards this kind because I can just sew it on and I don't have to make a casing. And I can just sew more twill tape on top of it just to make sure it doesn't feel bad on the skin. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to look for my line here. And then I'm just going to cut this. I found this music on this site called I'm trying to find it right now because I forgot the name. Oh dang, I really forgot the name. It's called Bin Sounds and it's really cool. I will put a little bug at the bottom of the screen here when I go on break so you can find out. All of the songs that I'm playing are free to download and use for live streams as long as you tell the name of the people who sell them, so the bin sounds people. So that's pretty cool. My bones cut. Now I'm going to cut some more twill tape. I have two different kinds of scissors. This one is for fabric only. So these get all the other jobs. I really enjoy this music though. I usually listen to like rock and roll and stuff, but or show tunes, but I can't just put those on a stream because I don't own the rights to them. But I do have a lot of local musician friends, so maybe eventually I will ask them for permission to play their records for my streams and kind of give them a little rep too. As you can tell, I'm not really like using a ruler to measure this kind of stuff. I eyeball a lot of things once I know what is needed. And I don't have my iron set up in here yet. I haven't really figured out where it's gonna go because it's a gravity fed iron, so the tank hangs from the ceiling. So maybe I'll just install it there and then have my ironing board back there. That way it'll work out, I guess. But I'm also in my loft space, which has this sloped ceiling, so if I get too close to that wall I always hit my head in this popcorn ceiling because this house was built in the 70s. But anyway, long story short about irons, I'm just hand pressing, finger pressing these bone casings just a little bit, just to get a little bit of a crease on them. See? If you're enjoying my video, please feel free to send a small donation to my Venmo account. I am trying to save up for another camera. I'm using my cell phone camera as my second shot camera for my sewing machine, so I can show a good viewpoint of that. But I would like to get a webcam, preferably one that's Bluetooth, which would be totally awesome. And that way I can use my cell phone as my mic pack. I have a lavalier microphone that's connected to a sewing foot, because sewing feet are everywhere in my house. I have this lavalier microphone, which is really great, but it's tethered, so I won't be able to use it until I can get my cell phone as a mic pack. So, but anyway, my first time live streaming, so we're just gonna build it from here. All right, so, you know, it says to just like sew this stuff down. I'm actually gonna quickly base stitch my little things down, my little ties, because I don't want them to move around when I'm sewing down boning and bone casing. Eventually I'll get 2 chairs up here. Oh, there's a wasp in my house. He's flying like right around me. It's kind of scary. So I usually love automatic threaders on my sewing machine, but I just haven't figured out this one yet. I just don't know how it works. So if you do know, shoot me a message, either in chat on here or you can find me on my Instagram. This is thread for the bottom of embroidery, so we don't want to use this right now. I gotta think where I put my other bobbins. I've moved everything around. My typical sewing room is elsewhere, but I moved it all up here because the lighting is really good. My friend Heather once told me that she always double winds the bobbin tension because she and I both really like tight bobbins, which that's what this is, if you don't know. And so ever since she told me about that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that forever and ever and ever. So thanks, Heather. I appreciate you. everything in white today because I have a crap ton of white thread and I can just make a bunch of white bobbins and just keep going with them. It makes things a lot easier. See how tight this bobbin is? Oh yeah, that's good. But I'm gonna fill it up all the way. So pretty much every sewing machine threads the same. You always go from where the thread is coming from, down one side and up the other. And usually the first side that you go down is where your tension disc is, and then the side that you come up is where the up and down is. I don't know if up and down is actually what that thing is called. So if you know what that thing is actually called, please let me know. I like learning new things, which I'm assuming y'all do too if you're on here watching me. So, bobbins always go in differently for each machine. Fortunately for this machine, it's got a little diagram on it. I don't know if y'all can see that or not, but it's pretty cool. And usually, like, there's a blade right here, and you can cut it, and it'll automatically start. But I like having a tail coming out of the back of my machine, so I don't actually go through and cut my bobbin thread, because I just don't feel like it's long enough. So, I just pull it through, because I like to have both my tails, because if you know where your tails are, and I like to pull my tails out through the back, if you know where they are, then they won't get all bunched up under whatever it is that you're sewing. All right. Let's see. I actually typically use a different machine, but my old machine is being a butthead. So I'm using this machine today, but I don't really know. I'm not used to the computerized sewing machines. No, I don't want you to delete them. Hello. My dog isn't typically allowed up here, but I don't want to tell her to go away right now. As long as she's good. This is Lucy. That's L-O-O-S-E-Y, because she's a loose noodle, aren't you? You're a loose noodle. You gonna help me sew? Okay, can you stay? Stay. That's not staying. Okay, I really don't know how to use this machine. Okay, well, I want... No, I don't need your help. I don't need your help. Thank you. Okay, so I want the needle to be in the middle of my sewing. Go on, lay down. Go, shoot. Okay, here we go. Okay, is this it? This looks like it. Let's test. This is the kind of fabric that I'm going to use for my fashion fabric. But this is just an extra piece. tension is kind of funky on this thing. Let's see. I've never really used this machine before, so every time a new machine comes into my life, you always gotta figure out if it's gonna be a pain in the butt or not. Maybe it's just not threaded right. When in doubt, always rethread. I found the lever for my threader. Oh, look at that. That's so cool. I love automatic needle threaders. Neat. So I'm just going to turn my tension up all the way and see what that does. That looks good. Yeah. That's pretty good. Okie doke. So I'm gonna base this. I don't know how to change my stitch length. Typically, I sew everything on 2.5, 3 stitch length, which is their millimeters. But I'm just gonna base this, so I'm gonna do it on 5 because I'm really just tacking it down so it doesn't move anywhere, so I can take the pins out. Oh, come on out, pin. Come on out. Always start with my needle down. Oh, that's not where I want it to be. So I have 2 dogs and a cat, and typically I don't let the dogs up here in the loft space because this is the cat's area and he deserves a nice spot of refuge away from the crazy beasts. But I don't know where he is right now. He must be somewhere else in the house. So that's why I'm not chasing Lucy away. But typically she's not allowed up here. Right? Right, Sniffers? But she is so cute. She's so cute. other dog does not like the stairs. I have a spiral staircase that leads up here, and the rest of my house is flat. So the other dog doesn't like to try to figure out the spiral staircase, which is funny. This one had guts. Right, Loose Goose? You got guts. You got guts. You're so cute and sweet. You're so cute and sweet. Yes, you are. All right. So, bones. I'm just going to lay these bones on and sew them down. I'm not going to try to pin them on or anything because I don't feel like I need to. So, now we got to figure out, do I want to lay the bone to the inside of the line, or do I want to put it right down the middle of the line? And the pattern doesn't really give you any anything about that. Like I said, I've never done this pattern before, so there's so many different things that could be a thing. I can't visualize exactly how these ties are going to work because this is the center back. So are the ties meant to tie it together like that? And if so, then it's quite weird that you're going to put the bone on like that. I mean, I guess it's okay. Well, anyway, I'm just going to assume that I'm putting the bone on top of the ties, because actually I think it said that. And I'm going to do it down the middle. So where my line is, I'm just going to put my bone evenly on top of that the best I can. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to hold my ties to make sure they don't get looped around somehow. And I'm putting my stitch length back onto 3. And I'm just trying to make sure that my needle lines up into the outer edge of this bone. These bones, I don't know if y'all can see, but these bones have like this edge, and then the plastic, because it's kind of like woven nylon with these thick plastic pieces in it. So we'll see how that works. I also own an industrial sewing machine, but there was no way I was going to be able to get that thing up these stairs into this space, so it is currently still downstairs in my little sewing space. But these bones would be nicer on that machine. But it's just so much easier just to have everything in one place and be able to just like pop over and sew and then cut and then sew and then cut, whatever you need to do. So that seems to be okay. So I'm just going to, you know, I might not even need the casing because I feel like this is going to be the outside of the lining. And, or is it? Or is it going to be the inside of the lining? See, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work. So illustrations don't really show me. A lot of people have a lot of mixed feelings about these J.P. Ryan patterns. I like them for the most part, but they're quite confusing when you get down to these differences. So that's why I'm just making this without the pressure of trying to figure out how to fit it to anyone, and with the intentions of knowing that something's gonna not come out right, but then I'll figure it out and learn how to do it correctly for next time. So for now, I'm just gonna follow the pattern, follow all the directions, figure out what rules to break later, because I really just don't know how this lining is gonna go in. I mean, it seems to me that this is going to be the part that's going to be on your skin, and then this is going to be the part that's going to be under the fart cape. I'm just going to call it fart cape from now on, because that's kind of what it is. The pleated part of the gown that just comes out from the back of the dress. I think this dress is also known as the sack dress, but I may be wrong. I am a terrible costume historian. I try. I learn a lot of things for shows that I need, and then I forget them when I move on to the next thing. So my background is theater costumes. I've been doing theater costumes for several years. I've done some TV, I've done some movies. I think I have a IMDb. It just showed up one day. I was on a date with a guy, and he said he Googled me, and he's like, "You have an IMDb page." And I was like, "Really? Cool." And he was very impressed, and I was very unimpressed, because you know how hard it is to sew with a cat? Have you ever tried sewing with a dog? You're just so sweet and cute. We have to take a moment out and love on the dog. Take a moment for dog love, for dog love. So cute. Mwah. Okay. One kiss and that's it. One kiss and that's all you get. I usually listen to audiobooks when I sew. I've not really listened to music. God, sewing with you is not going to be easy, is it? Will you not get your nose in there? Will you not get your nose in there? So sweet. You're so sweet. Oh. Okay. Now for my bone casings. Like I said, I kind of finger pressed these edges. I think my stream froze. wanted to go outside. Whoa. So I let her outside. So I am just lining this up also. I'm not going to pin it down or anything. I've learned from a lot of tailors that you don't always have to use pins, especially when you're sewing in a straight line, when your stitch is going in a straight line. So, you know what I would like to try? I have a thing for this sewing machine. With this new sewing machine, I have all these like toys and stuff, which I've never really used before. So I'm gonna try this out. It might be a little difficult trying to put it on here with my stitching on. Neat. Look, hope I didn't break it. Okay, cool. So that gives me more of a bed to sew on. That's kind of fun. Alright. So, like I was saying, I don't really use pins when I know I'm going in a straight line because they're just not really necessary. Oh, I must have cut this a lot longer than I needed. That's okay. So I cut this a little longer than I needed. Like I said, I was eyeballing it. So when I get down here closer to the end, like right about there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get in there and cut some of that length off. There. And then just flip this under. Just a little bit so it overlaps the bottom of the bone. And this is not what the directions said to do. This is what I am doing. Now, turn it, stitch it, get to that corner. I went a little too far, so I'm going to back up a little bit. Turn it, and then stitch. And then I got up to this corner, turn it, and then stitch it. That looks pretty good. Cut my threads. And this is what I mean with your, when you don't know where your tails are. And yes, I am still guilty of doing it, even though I try not to. See how it all, like, gets in there? It doesn't look that good. So, I mean, all of this is going to be either towards somebody's skin or underneath the pretty part, so I really don't care that much, especially on this one, because this is really just me putting the pattern together the first time to make sure that it is good. I got these little guys hanging out, but that's okay. I'll know not to do that next time. This 12 tape up just right over centering it over the bone. Like excess threads everywhere. You don't want them on there in the end anyway, and it's best just take care of them when you see them, because they'll end up everywhere. I say all right a lot when I'm doing videos and stuff, but I say it in my head anyway, so I don't know. He's a professional broadcast engineer. He knows these things, but you know, I'm just a seamstress, a costume designer. I'm not really a performer. Alright, so far, next time I cut these 12 tapes, I'll cut them on a straight line and not at an angle. That way they will stay completely underneath this. I like the way this turned out. I like being able to sew the bone on and then sew the 12 tape on top of it. It feels really nice. So if this is the side that hits the skin, then it won't feel bad. But really, you're wearing a chemise under these kinds of things anyway. So go on to the next directions. So, insert boning, we did that. Tie small knots at the ends of the tapes or otherwise finish the ends of the tapes to prevent unraveling. Okay. Well, this tape is it feels like it's made out of like a polyester or something. there's also stuff called it's called freight check. I haven't eaten breakfast or had real coffee yet because I'm doing this thing called intermittent fasting, and I have an hour left before I can actually eat. So my words and my thoughts aren't very together yet. So, but yeah, freight check. It's pretty good stuff, and I might do that. So I'm going to put a pin in that for later. So now it says we're going to work on the understomacher construction. So let's pull out the understomacher. This is the back lining. We're going to set this aside for now. Put this back over here. This is the pattern piece for what we just did. I always like to keep my pattern pieces together with the piece. That way it's easier to understand what I've got. This is the front lining facing, and I think I saw, yeah, that'll be the next step. So we're gonna leave that to the side because we'll leave that on top. Undersleeve, stomacher lining, sleeve, side piece. Here it is. Understomacher. I should have cut 4. Did I cut 4? I did. Alright. So, we're going to work on the understomacher. And the next will be the pentalayer front lining facing. So we're going to leave that on top because we'll be using that next. So let's look back there. Out of my hand. Okay. So what do we have here? We have understomacher construction. With right sides together, pin understomacher pieces together across the top along the center front and stitch the bottom matching dots. So we've got our pattern piece and we've got our pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. So we'll work on this one first. So it wants me to sew from this dot all the way around to this dot. So I'm just gonna mark a couple of dots. I know that my seam allowance is 5/8 inch because it says it right here. So I'm just kind of putting the dots sort of where they're gonna go, just so I can know which corners I'm looking at. So with right sides together, this I am going to pin these two pieces together because they might get a little fiddly, but I'm not going to put a lot of pins in it. And I'm going to make sure to pin it in such a way where as I'm sewing, the seam allowance edge is the part that's under this part of the machine. I'm just putting 3 pins in it. I don't need a lot. So with right sides together, pin understomacher pieces together across the top, along the center front, and stitch across the bottom, matching dots. Stitch understomacher together on top, front, and bottom, leaving the outer sides open. Trim away and press. Okay, so that's gonna be for both of these sets. So it looks like what we're gonna be doing here is making sort of like an inside corsety thing. Because it looks like the next bit of directions is going to be, I'm folding this back over itself. There's a placement for boning, and then there's spots for eyelets. Either we'll do these with our grommet press and put grommets in this, which will probably what I'll end up doing, or you can make your eyelet holes by hand sewing little buttonhole stitches around the edges. I only would do that if I had to be completely historically accurate, but I'm not going to do that today because I'm more of a theater historically accurate rather than really historically accurate. So the less work and the better, because in theater you really don't have time to create all these costumes, especially if you want to make a whole bunch of them. So make sure my machine is lined up. It had me stop at the corner and turn the thread, which I would do, but since we're turning this inside out, sometimes I like to just go back over it and then do that, because I like to make sure that the corner is nice and backstitched, because when we get ready to cut the corner to trim the excess fabric, I just like to make sure that there's a lot of stitching there to make sure it doesn't just like plop open and start fraying. All right, so now cut off all of the excess threads. I hate them, but they're there. And then we're going to trim it down to like a 1/4 inch. Pull my little garbage can out for this. Now, this is the important part. So, the reason why I also like to sew off the edge is that way I get an X that marks the spot. You don't have to do that, but I like it. So I know exactly where I cut my corner. Then I'm going to just trim my corner down a little bit to where it's more of a point. That way there's less excess fabric in. I'm going to just trim that off too, and then come down to this corner and just cut it. Now I'm not cutting where the stitching overlaps because you don't want it to not you don't want to put a hole in it. And since you've sewn it together there, so now we're going to turn it like this. And you just kind of get your finger in there. I like to roll it around a little bit. That kind of pushes the point out. Sometimes I'll get something that is pointy but not sharp. So like the scissors that are closed aren't very pointy. So if you can gently just like kind of get in there and push it, then it just helps turn that point out. Now this is going to go downstairs to the iron, which I have not turned on yet, so we might have to take a short break, and I'll iron this and maybe have some breakfast real fast. It's 10:20 now. I don't think you can see him, but the cat just showed up. His name is Rudy. And I was talking about my other dog earlier. Her name is Millie. Like I said, I have 3. I also have 3 baby caterpillars that I rescued off my fennel plant. The fennel I actually planted just for these caterpillars. They are the caterpillar to the black swallowtail butterfly, which is my favorite butterfly. And actually the butterfly that got me interested in butterflies. So I have had a couple of the caterpillars on my plant, but they keep disappearing. I think the birds eat them because they're so big and chunky. So I decided that I'm just gonna, like, every time I find them on my plant, I'm just gonna take them and put them in little houses so they won't get eaten by the birds. All right, so and trim away excess seam allowance and turn understomacher right side out. You know, it's funny, it says fold back and center front, but it doesn't say anything where center front is. But I'm assuming it's here along this fold line. That says fold line there. So if I'm folding it, but that doesn't show me the same thing as what my picture on here shows me, which is weird. Fold back and center front along fold line as marked on pattern and press. Along fold to make a facing. After fitting the lining, a casing will be sewn in along the center front fold for feather boning, and eyelets will be made for lacing next to boning. Okay, so that's a TBD on fitting, so we'll wait. So, as of right now, we will iron this down, and then what I'll end up doing is I'll measure the distance between here and the fold line, and then measure it on here, and then I'll just fold and press it, and I'll do that during a break. So, we're gonna take a break. I'm gonna do that really fast, and then I'll be back.